Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 5 of the Slow Smoked Pigskin podcast. If I say it slightly slightly slower, I can get it out.
You got it right this time and then messed everything else up. Good job. Hello, everybody.
So, fantasy season's over, and you guys thought that you might not have to hear us anymore, but you don't hear us anyways, but we're still going to record it.
Problem is that we have too much fun doing this, so we're going to keep doing this, and one of you, hopefully at some point in time, will listen/watch.
My 8-year-old has been asking to hear/see them, so Janelle said maybe her and Skylar can binge them together so that maybe Janelle will finally have heard it.
Whatever works.
She told me she listened to the first half of the first episode.
That's what you should say. You should be like, Skylar, you can only watch them. You can only watch or listen to them if your mom watches them or listens to them with you. So go bug her.
There you go. All right. So we don't have any fantasy news to talk about. So let's talk about some NFL news. Going back to last week, a bunch of the coaching dominoes are starting to fall. First one that I remember getting announced after, I guess we talked about a few of them the week before, Vrabel and such. The latest one since we last recorded, Pete Carroll out as the Seahawks head coach. There was claims that it was mutual and he's going to stay with the organization, but when you heard him talk at a press conference, kind of sounds like a guy who still wants to be coaching.
No one really wants to be kicked out of their spot, but I mean, he's an advisory role he's still going to have control of the team. He might not be doing X's and O's, but that's a good spot for him, I think. Yeah,
latest rumors I've heard on Seahawks job is Dan Quinn leaving the Cowboys, but we'll see. Yeah, last I heard, I read something somewhere that said he didn't want to leave, but right now everybody's saying something just to make a headline. So we'll see where he lands. And not to mention, we'll see what happens if the Cowboys start thinking about clearing house after some stuff we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Surprised you're wearing that jersey and hat still. Usually you take a week off or so after, but... No, I am a Cowboys fan. I've been in pain for 30 years, and I will continue my pain. And I am rocking CD, who still had a big game, albeit a lot of it in garbage time, but yeah. Hey, there's always next year. Yeah. Anyways, next coach, Belichick, also parted ways with the Pats, and in what was kind of a surprise to me, they, like a day, 2 days later, announced Gerard Mayo, and he's now the youngest head coach. When I heard Belichick was out, I assumed Vrabel was going to be in, but they went with a different linebacker from their recent history. Yeah, I thought Vrabel, he wanted to go back to New England, and I thought he was up there for. I saw him up there for somebody's was getting an award for something. I want to say, I don't know. It was towards the end of the season. I saw him up there, and it kind of made sense. Maybe he was talking and trying to put his chip in the pile, but I guess they went with Mayo. Yeah, I think it might have been when they put Brady in the Ring of Honor or something like that. Yeah, there you go. That's what it was. Anyways, speaking of more really old coaches, I'll let you take this one because I hate the guy. Roll Tide is all I have to say. And after, 17 seasons? I don't know the exact number, but the winningest coach as of lately, Nick Saban, is out. He has retired. He just didn't think that he could put the effort that the players deserved anymore, is the last I had heard. So he still wants to be part of the Tide family and still wants to do things. So maybe he's going to be one of those Pete Carroll advisory roles there in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, it's shocked. I've heard. I don't know if they've actually replaced him yet, but there's been a few names thrown around, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm not sad he's gone. Speaking of other teams I don't like, the Giants lost their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, which I hear the name and I just still think of the old school talk show host. But the reports I heard was that on the way, part of the reason he left is because shortly before he cussed out Dable, pissed off about something, and just stormed out and said he was done.
That is classic. I love it. I love the fact that he said so. They're all buddies. All the coaches for the Giants were all buddies, and I think the head coach brought everybody in, not something, and one was out, and the other one was told to leave at the same time or something. And then Martindale was like, well, I'm leaving. And the next day he's on a plane video at the airport after he cusses out Dable. So yeah, pretty.
Well, that's the news I had heading into the weekend. And then over the weekend, we had 3 wonderful days of playoff football.
Yes.
2 games a day. Not how that was originally supposed to work out, but they got a blizzard in Buffalo because for some reason Buffalo won't put a goddamn roof on the stadium in a place where it snows feet at a time.
It plays to their advantage. So I kind of agree with it.
All right, starting in order of the games. First game of the weekend was a surprise to me where the Texans just absolutely handed the Browns their own ass.
I said last week or the week before, the Browns were kind of my sleeper to win the whole thing. Whoops.
I'm not gonna lie, I had sort of jumped on that dark horse Browns bandwagon, and they just got decimated. I mean, Flacco 2 pick sixes in a row is pretty nasty, but
yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch much football this weekend. I was, just following it, but that was a surprise. I mean, CJ Stroud, I mean,
I'm sorry.
He played like he has been there for a couple years and knew what he was doing the whole time. So hats off to the Texans.
Texans seem to have a bright future with some young stars, so they'll definitely be interesting to watch over the next couple of years. The next Saturday game, 4th coldest game ever. I can't remember if it was in the playoffs or regular season, whatever. It was they couldn't go 3 sentences while watching that game without mentioning what the temperature or wind chill was. Don't get me wrong, it was freaking cold. It was like -4 with wind chill and -20. And it was very apparent that one of the teams was not used to playing in the cold.
Yes, I love the memes that you're seeing about the Dolphins coming out with just like the Jamaican bobsled team, like freaking hilarious. Like if you're not, it's one thing to play in the cold. It's one thing to just be used to playing in the cold, but clearly the Dolphins. I mean, any team that has good weather all season long, like you can't prepare for that. It's a completely different aspect. When you go out and you sit, it's not the same thing. You can't find ways to stay warm. So it doesn't surprise me.
I'll give them a little bit of credit. They were missing a couple of their really important pieces on defense, and they've had some injuries, but it was not a close game. And the Dolphins didn't show up. Speaking of teams not showing up and getting embarrassed, the first game on Sunday, the Cowboys absolutely just whatever. They sucked. The game finished 16-point deficit, I think, and the game was never that close. 27-0 to halftime. Aaron Jones just ran over the Cowboys defense. Dan Quinn has gotten so much credit for being such a great defensive coordinator. At this point, Seahawks take him. After that performance, you can have him.
Every time I saw the ball thrown in the air, there was not a single defensive Cowboy within 10 yards of these receivers. And they caught the ball and just ran. Jordan Love, I believe, one of the first rookie quarterbacks to have a perfect passer rating in his playoff debut.
Well, he might have been the second because CJ Stroud did it on Saturday.
They didn't mention that when I was listening to it, but that's crazy. So I saw another stat that the Packers own the Cowboys in the playoffs. It's fair to say that every team owns the Cowboys, but the Packers specifically own the Cowboys. I think they're 7-1 Packers against the Cowboys in the playoffs. But I thought for sure at least the Cowboys would have got out of the first round, the wild card round. I didn't think they were going to go past that, but I thought they were going to beat the Packers.
I thought the Cowboys might go a round or two. I didn't think they were Super Bowl. I didn't think they were going to make it from the NFC, but I definitely expected them to beat the Packers. Okay, that's depressing. I'm moving on. Second game on Sunday, Lions and Rams.
Best game of the week.
It was what?
It was the best game of the week.
The irony was it was a good game, but it was Sunday night, and I had to get up early for work Monday, so I didn't see the end of it.
That's all right. I was at work myself at the end of it, but I was trying to watch it. But yeah, the Lions pretty much had the game the whole game, and then the Rams came back and tried, but fell just short. So
yeah, and not that it matters because their season's over, but Tyler Higbee got a torn ACL and a nasty hit to the knee.
It does, which they're going to be reviewing this offseason. Is that a dirty hit? Is it going to be an illegal hit? As of now, it's not. You were saying that earlier. What that means is that he's gone for at least week 10, if not all of the season. Like, he's not going to be around at the beginning for sure.
Yeah, with a tear this late in the season / postseason, getting back is going to be rough.
I mean, you're 8 months at the absolute earliest, and the bigger you are, the longer it's going to take. So,
and I don't remember how old Higbee is, but I don't think he's a spring chicken. So,
yeah, exactly. Maybe he can get some of Aaron Rodgers'
ACL magic or
something. He's got
Achilles magic,
and he can. I don't know, but anyways, on to the Bills and the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, it was expected for the Bills to win. The Steelers' offense is better than it has been, but I don't think many folks expected them to keep up with the Bills. Mike Tomlin continued his streak of winning seasons and losing in the wild card round. That's been his go-to. Then there was talks about him leaving, and now it says he's staying. The Steelers got to figure something out on offense because Kenny Pickett doesn't look like the answer. Mason Rudolph definitely ain't the answer. So, and they don't have an offensive coordinator at the moment.
What happens if you give Mason Rudolph the whole season? Like, he got them into the playoffs, and they were scoring, averaging 30 points at the end. They came up against the Bills. Like, yeah, at that point in time, in Buffalo, I don't give any teams a chance to beat the Bills in Buffalo. The only two would be the Ravens or the Niners, and even then, like, I don't know. The Bills, like, it's different when they're at home, when there's 3 feet of snow that the fans have cleared out. Like, that's just a different atmosphere, just like in KC. Like, if that game was in Miami, I feel like Miami wins. If that game's in Pittsburgh has a better chance of playing. Like, that's just what you get for having home field.
Yeah, well, and then final game of the playoffs, Bucks stomped the Eagles to just completely prove that apparently the NFC East was just overall a joke this year.
I mean, winning records, really good winning records, and like they just didn't perform. I mean, the Eagles lost the last 6 of 7. I picked the Bucks to win. Again, I just
hold on one second. We got a guest.
Oh,
come here,
special guest. Hello.
Hey, anybody who doesn't, for some reason, know me well enough to know, this is my daughter, Skylar. She's 8. She says hi.
Hi, Skylar.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
All right, can I go back to recording now?
Anything you want to say about football? See ya. He's out like the Cowboys.
Yeah. So, just by the way, the Pick'em League we're in through with Scott.
Yeah.
Janelle has agreed to let her have her own pick'em team next year. So that's going to be interesting. But yesterday, or
I think she'll do really well, actually.
Sunday, she was like naming off Cowboys players to me because apparently she's been studying to learn them because she wants to make me so proud of her.
She should pick a different team.
How dare you? All right, so that's all the games, by the way, coming up this weekend. We're going to have Texans, Ravens, Packers, Niners, Bucks at Lions, and Chiefs at Bills. Texans, Ravens, that's going to be an interesting one. Packers, 49ers, nobody's going to give the Packers a chance, but nobody gave them the chance against the Cowboys probably.
No, different teams. I mean, I always worry about teams that have that bye week. You know, when the Packers they've got some swagger, they've got a little, they're rolling now. So it's like, yeah, but how do you not choose the Niners? Same with the Ravens. Like, would it surprise me if the Texans won? No, but I wouldn't pick them to win. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and then Buccaneers at Lions should be interesting. Two spunky teams.
I'm going to go with the Lions on that one.
I agree. And then Chiefs at Bills. And so Patrick Mahomes' first ever
Bills
road playoff game. I'm taking the Bills too. I think this is finally Allen's chance to put him in this place. The Chiefs aren't the team they used to be. More NFL news after the game, after the Bucks beat the Eagles. Jason Kelsey supposedly told teammates he's going to retire. That's a bummer. He's a good dude, been a good player for a long time. Going to be interesting to see what happens with the push without him. That is, if they don't outlaw it. And then we got a bunch of players starting to declare for the NFL draft. So for us dynasty folks, we should care about this.
That's the important stuff right now.
Yeah. So
Caleb Williams, did he officially declare?
Yeah, Caleb Williams, USC quarterback, officially declared.
He's supposedly the number one pick.
Yeah, we'll see. JJ McCarthy, Michigan quarterback. I guess since he won the national championship, he's going. But I don't think if he's a first round pick, he's a late.
He's a number 4 quarterback right now. So depending for us, he's going to be a middle of the first round pick. Would be my guess. You don't think so?
Nah, we're not. Because we're not super flex yet, I don't know that he'd go that early.
All right.
See. And then probably first or second pick in Dynasty Draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. officially declared. That kid's a beast. It's going to be real interesting to see him in the NFL, see if he can hang.
Yeah, he's his dad, but what, 2 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier?
I think more than that. I thought his dad was like 5'10". He's 6'3", 215.
Oh, I thought his dad was a little taller than that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember, but
yeah, beast.
Yeah. All right. So main topic for today, after a long time on news, we decided that we're going to go back look at every trade that was made in our Dynasty League in 2023 and kind of look at how they've turned out now at the end of the season. You know, at the time, they were different stories, and so some of it may have shifted, but looking at what it did to our teams at the end of the 2023 season, just thought it'd be fun to revisit some of these.
Absolutely. I think that it's enlightening to see them, because it's I'm not gonna lie, it's scary to trade when you're trying to get rid of players that you have drafted or that have performed for you, and you think that you want to go a different direction. Maybe you didn't initiate the trade and someone has intrigued you, and it's like, this is good news because you can see, you know, where the value is and where you may have gone wrong and where you may want to, you know, do things a little differently this next season. But this trading in Dynasty is the way to get players. You're not going to get your players off the waiver wire. With that being said, you're going to find one or two. Someone will find one or two throughout the season. Every team is not going to find their player that they need on the waiver wire.
Absolutely. So we pulled up the trade, looked at players, draft picks, etc. What we did was went to Fantasy Pros website, and in there they have a dynasty trade value chart. And so we put numbers to a value for each player or asset in the trade, just to kind of give us an idea of where the trade ended up for value for each team.
Super side note, that's a good tool to have. Do your research. There's trade values for the player based off of, it's not just when someone offers you a trade, they're basing it off of what they have done their research on and seen as far as what that player's worth is. So that's something to look into for, you know, some people might be on the newer side to fantasy football and not quite understanding where values come from, where the trade comes from. And again, which I'm sure has been talked to in the chats or in text messages, trades are just a starting point. So don't take offense to it if it gets low balled or high balled or whatever you want to talk about. But moving on.
Yeah. All right. So the first trade of the 2023 season was actually a impressively figured out trade that, if I remember correctly, Joe Silva put it together because I was trying to make a trade with him and Daniel Vernon was trying to make a trade for him. And it is the only three-way trade. And of course, that's the one we're going to start with to just make sure everything is confusing. So
I was surprised when I didn't remember that this had actually taken place until you put it up here, but it was impressive that you guys could actually do this.
Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure Joe did it because I was trying to make one and he was trying to make one and he made it all work. So in that trade, Joe received Calvin Ridley, Chris Olave, the 2023 2.05 pick, which turned into Rashee Rice, and the 207, which turned into Josh Downs. Now, all those players combined gave him a value of 174 as of this weekend. Now, at the time, those values might have been different, but as of this weekend, it was 174. He gave up Rachaad White, he gave up the 101 pick, which everyone assumed was going to be and was Bijan Robinson, and he gave up pick 211, which actually turned into Jaden Reed, who has turned out to be a nice player for the Packers, for a value of 165. So he gave up 174, he gave 165 and received 174. He ended up giving up what turned into 4 wide receivers for 2 running backs and a receiver. He received 4 receivers for giving up 2 running backs and a receiver. So overall, he did pretty well in that trade.
He came out on top.
Yeah, I was one of the other participants in that trade. I gave up my 205 pick and my 307 pick, which turned into Rashee Rice and Cedric Tillman, who played a little bit here and there for the Browns, but not huge. And I received Rachaad White. I gave up a value of 56 and received a value of 52. So a little bit of down for me, but that's pretty close to even. And depending on your team, and the funny part is everybody involved in this deal got moved again.
So to put it into perspective, a single player at 52, he's probably in the top couple of his position. Is that correct?
Yeah, Rachaad White, I think, is within the top 10 or 12 at the position right now.
So it's weird because a couple of things that I looked at today, and I think it's obviously based off of playoffs, but right now his value is a lot higher because he's performing in the playoffs, which I don't think is necessarily fair to look at because not everybody is able to play. But yeah, I believe right now he's number 1 running back just based off of the playoffs. But 52 is that's a solid value for a running back.
Yeah.
That's a first rounder for sure.
Third person in the trade was Daniel Vernon. He received Bijan Robinson, the 101 pick, the 211 pick, Jaden Reed, and Cedric Tillman, and he gave up Ridley, Olave, and the 207, which became Josh Downs. Means he received 119 in value, gave up 124, but that's pretty much a wash. Like, once again, and these are current dynasty values, and what you were doing at the time looks very different than where it is now. So this was actually a very well done, pretty even for everybody trade that I think worked out pretty darn well.
Yeah, trading draft picks, it can be very, 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 very beneficial. Well done for everybody, but you came out on the short end as far as total value, but that's okay.
Yeah, the funny part is looking at the picks that were traded in there, 205, 207, 211 were Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, and Jaden Reed, who are all 3 picks that pretty much hit. Josh Downs had some injuries. Jaden Reed coming on at the end. Rashee Rice looks like potentially the number one receiver. So it's just interesting
He hit
because
blackjack.
when you
He hit blackjack on all three of those.
yeah, and I mean, a lot of times when you're looking at second round picks, you're looking at, maybe a 25% success rate on average on a second round pick. And so for that many of them to pan out, honestly, going through this exercise, I was impressed with how many draft picks overall actually look like good players this year.
Yeah.
So,
no, especially for like it's hard to imagine that a rookie is going to perform as well as most of them have this year. Yeah, you don't think when I think of drafting, like those guys are going straight to my taxi squad, But it goes to show you that these guys that come out of college, like they play a couple of years, and these colleges have put them into, NFL ready year one. That's good. Good for us.
All right, so that was confusing with the three-way trade. Let's go with let's look at all the rest of the trades, which are all two-way trades, which are way easier to evaluate.
You can go with we'll start with an easier one. We got Joe and Jason.
Jason Freeman.
Joe received Deontay Johnson, a value of 31 from Jason F4 Freeman for his 205 pick, which turned out to be the Rashee Rice pick. How did that? These aren't they're not in order. The 405 pick, the 5 and the 5th pick of this last draft, Kenny McIntosh and Evan Hull for a total value of 53. Vernon received the first pick.
No. You're on to the next.
You're right.
Sorry. So to simplify that, they traded Deontay Johnson for a 2nd, a 4th, and a 5th.
There you go.
But the big deal for Jason was that the pick that one of the second round pick was the one that became Rashee Rice. By the way, if you haven't noticed, that pick actually got bounced around a bunch of teams. That's why it was in the previous trade. It's in this trade, and then it's going to be in another trade. But point being, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, which ended up being those players, actually won Jason the trade because Deontay Johnson's getting older, hasn't been the same player.
Yeah.
So the next one, Vernon, before the draft, was trying to rack up like half of the first round, if I remember correctly. So in this pick, trade, he made a trade with Raf to get the 104, which he ended up taking JSN, Mr. Jackson Smith, and Jigba for the 107 and the 407. The 107 ended up being CJ Stroud, and then the 407 ended up being Keaton Mitchell, who looked real good until he got hurt once he came on late in the season. So value-wise, JSN has a real high value because he's a real promising prospect, even though he didn't have the greatest year one. The trick in looking at this trade is the fact that we are going to be converting to Superflex, and if you look at CJ Stroud's value in a Superflex league, it is through the roof. So if you take Superflex into account, Raf absolutely crushed this trade. If you don't, then technically Vernon won, but I think it actually worked out all right for both of them. The next two trades, I should let Drew talk about because they're just going to depress me.
Meaning Aaron was involved in all of them, which Aaron's involved in more trades than anybody. But so Aaron received Jahan Dotson from Neil for
a second and a 4th.
An early 2nd and a late 4th. The early 2nd turned out to be Dalton Kincaid, which I think he's going to turn out to be fantastic. Charlie Jones for a total value of 45. Jahan Dotson had a value of 25. So Neil came out very on top for that one as of now.
Jahan Dotson, I had real hopes that year 2 he was going to be a breakout player, and that didn't happen, and instead Neil got Dalton Kincaid, who looks like a real promising young tight end, and Charlie Jones, who actually didn't have a great year in Cincinnati, but with the likely departure of T. Higgins from Cincinnati, Charlie Jones could be providing
his
some
value
value
can go up,
next year.
for sure.
Oh, the next trade possibly hurts even more.
Aaron and Neil again. Aaron just got Nick Chubb for Ezekiel Elliott and this one's gonna hurt. Devon. He's changed his name a few times. Achan. For. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a first round pick. And the time it was a late first round, and it was Devon Achan for a total value of 63. Ezekiel Elliott didn't do anything until the last 2 games of the season. So his value it might go up for next year, but either way, the Devon Achan is the winning pick in that trade right there against Nick Chubb, who obviously got hurt. And
yeah, I mean,
if he comes back, it's a different story, but we'll see.
If Nick Chubb, I made that trade hoping Nick Chubb was the piece that could help me get a championship this year. Luckily, it worked out even without him. But as a older running back, who got hurt, his value absolutely went out the window. And then Devon Achan is one of the most promising young running backs. So, basically, as part of this effort, I looked at all the trades I made, and every trade I made with Neil, he just ended out on top, and my team values went down. Everybody else, I had a combined positive value against. Neil absolutely crushed me in trades.
So don't make trades with Neil. Got it.
Well, the ironic part is I'm pretty confident I offered him every one of them, and they just didn't work out for me. So he was happy to keep trading with me.
He can trade, but just don't trade with him, because if you offer, it's bad juju.
Yeah. The next trade was the blockbuster trade. I remember, to me, it was one of the big blockbuster trades I remember before the draft, between Steve and Daniel Vernon. Steve got Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown. That's 2 big old names. And he traded away Lamar Jackson at 105, which turned into Bryce Young. Lamar Jackson's value, if you look at it in a super flex league, his value's through the roof. If you look at it in a 1 quarterback league, Steve absolutely decimated that, winning that trade. And maybe Bryce Young has a future, but right now he does not look good.
I think that, I don't know. I don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see him being any of the quarterbacks that I don't know. I'm torn on him, but right now I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyways, so
those were all the trades prior.
Nope, there's a couple more.
Oh, okay.
The next one, I got Tyreek Hill from Jason Freeman for pick 110 and pick 205, which actually turned into Zay Flowers and Rashee Rice. So, I mean,
there's Rashee. There's that second pick again, moving around.
Yeah, right. I told you that pick move, and that's not the last time it moves. And the crazy part is looking at the future, Zay Flowers and Rashee Rice are more valuable than Tyreek Hill for the future. But Tyreek Hill helped me win the championship this year. So it hurt my future a little bit with the way it turned out. But for this year, you got the ship, and ships never go away.
I mean, exactly. You have the title of champion, and that cannot be taken away from you, even if you lose the next 5 years. You still won, and I haven't.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm going to take this one real quick too.
Yeah.
So then Jason and I made a pick swap. If I remember correctly, this one was during the draft. Jason got the 202 from me for the 205 and the 311. Now, the 202.
So you ended up actually drafting Rashee Rice after all was said and done. Is that correct?
I ended up. Well, the problem is actually I lied because there's another trade.
You drafted him.
I drafted him.
Right. He's still going to move around, but you drafted him.
Yeah.
Because everything we've talked about so far has been pre-draft, so off season.
Yeah. Like I said, I think this one was at the draft time, before the draft picks were made, but during the draft.
Right.
He got the 202. I got the 205 and the 311. The bummer for him was that with his pick, he took Jonathan Mingo, who didn't pan out. And those two picks, once again, I traded one of these picks away, but
you hit pay dirt with the picks.
Yeah, those two picks ended up being Rashee Rice and Tank Dell.
Yeah.
So that was a lopsided trade with the way it turned out. Obviously, 202 you would have thought did better than 205 and 311, but 205 and 311 hit. I mean, that's just it happens. So, all right, what's next?
We got Joe and Neil. Joe received the 208. Turned out to be Michael Mayer for 301 and a 401. Marvin Sims and Sean Tucker.
Mims.
Value. I mean, essentially, it ended up being a wash. I'm not sure. I guess Joe really wanted to get Michael Mayer.
Yeah, I think that was the case at the time. And, Marvin Mims has been an explosive player, might be something. Sean Tucker, I don't even know if he's still on a roster. Michael Mayer is got some potential as a decent tight end, but to be seen.
And now we move. No.
Still in the draft.
Still in the draft. Still pre-draft or still in the middle of the draft. Aaron got Aaron and Neil. So we already know the outcome. But Aaron got the 3.08 pick. Turned out to be Tajay Spears with a value of 36. From Neil for the 301 and the 401 with Marvin Mims.
You moved up a line.
I moved up. Sorry. For the my bad. For Neil Rashid Shaheed and the 311, which turned out to be Tank Dell for a value of 68. So this was again in the middle of the draft, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, this was in the middle of the draft. I wanted to move up a couple of spots in the third round because I liked Tajay Spears. Unfortunately, the pick I gave up Rashid Shaheed, who I didn't know. He was actually better this year than I thought, and then I didn't expect 311 to turn into Tank Dell and Tank Dell to turn into what he was. So, once again, Neil got value out of me. Oh, look, the next trade is so that pick, that 308 for Spears was the last pick during the draft. After this, we moved to after the draft, but there's draft picks involved.
2024 draft picks, though.
Yep, here's where we started talking about 2024 and later draft picks. So Neil was in I think it was very early season, or maybe even before we started playing. And Neil was in need of a running back, and I felt like I had a couple of extras, and I wanted the Cowboys defense. Yeah, it must have been like week 2 or 3 because the Cowboys defense was putting up ridiculous amounts of points. So Neil got Rashad White, the Broncos defense, and pick a 2024 third, which now based on the results of our season is going to be pick 312.
12, yeah.
I got Trey Palmer, who I thought was a promising young rookie. I mean, he scored a touchdown last night. The Cowboys defense, because they were putting up stupid points, and 2024 second. So I moved up one round in the draft, but I gave up Rashad White, who turned into a fucking beast.
Yes.
So once again,
that was the kicker on the. You wanted the Cowboys defense, and he came out on top with Rashad White.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well.
No. All right. So next one we have Eddie and Joe. Eddie received Elijah Mitchell and 2024 3.8 pick for a value of 16. Joe for Dalvin Cook and a 2024 3.01. Obviously turned out that way because of Eddie's tanking. And I mean, it pretty much came out to a wash as far as the Elijah Mitchell back up in San Francisco, I believe, if that's correct. Dalvin Cook didn't make out to anything. He went to New York. He went to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, and I feel like if Aaron Rodgers was playing, it probably would have been a different story. But Aaron Rodgers got hurt, so Dalvin Cook just took the back seat.
Yeah, I think Eddie was trying to move up in the third. I think he was trying to unload Dalvin Cook. Eddie is a fan of Elijah Mitchell. I know I've talked to him about it. So
yeah,
Eddie actually moved back because they were trading thirds.
Right.
But I think the assumption was that Eddie's pick was going to be earlier than Joe's even then. By the way, like between that last trade of Neil and I and this trade of Eddie and Joe, it was many, many weeks of the season, if I remember correctly. It was probably a good 6-8 weeks before these trades started being made, which means get on earlier season trade, people.
Hey, take a chance. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, if CMC would have gotten hurt and Elijah Mitchell takes over, like you don't know. Like that's I get the reason for the trades, but was Dalvin Cook, could he be helpful at some point in time? Yes, but you don't know it. So it's just the way that pans out. So you want to take the next one?
Yeah, the next trade was once I decided I was trying to really go for it, and Eddie had, I think, decided he was kind of done with it. I finally went, all right, let's try and get Travis Kelce off of him. And Eddie and I had talks about Kyren Williams, and I believed in Kyren Williams more than Eddie did. He thought it was a fluke that Kyren was showing up. So I got Travis Kelce and Kyren Williams from Eddie. I sent Eddie Kyle Pitts, my 2024 first and my 2025 third. And if you go off values, I ended up with 98. He ended up with 59. I think Eddie regretted the trade a few weeks later once we saw Kyren actually, looking like he could continue some of the work he did. That being said, Travis Kelce then kind of fell apart after a hot start to the season.
This was pre-Taylor, so to put some perspective into it, like pre-Taylor.
All right, the next one, this was me trying to take advantage of when Christian McCaffrey looked like he wasn't going to play, and I had Jordan Mason sitting on my taxi squad, and I wanted to get him off my team. And so Jason Smith had CMC, and he was worried about having the backup. So I sent him Jordan Mason and Tajay Spears, who I didn't really want to send away Tajay Spears. I think he's probably the starting running back in Tennessee next season. So
agreed.
But I sent Jordan Mason and Tajay Spears for Jake Ferguson, a 2024 first and a 2025 second. So I didn't want to send away Tajay Spears, but Jason offered me a good enough deal that I couldn't pass it up. And now I got Jake Ferguson in case Travis Kelce doesn't pan out. Value-wise, I won that one. What was that?
I said he might retire. He's got a sugar mama.
Yeah, well, and his brother's not playing. I'm definitely concerned. So I won that trade 66-38 as of today. Next trade was Eddie trying to drop more veteran players.
Yeah. Verdon received Stephon Diggs from Eddie for Christian Watson, which I think he went Eddie was going youth, obviously. Unfortunately, Stephon Diggs just wasn't consistent. Hasn't really panned out. The value, though, he's still got good value at 41. Eddie also got a first-round pick in the 2024 draft for a total value of 64. Obviously, with what Green Bay has created up there with their young receivers, Christian Watson has a lot of value. I believe he got hurt a little bit towards the end of the season and actually was out a game or two. But youth and dynasty is a good thing to have plenty of.
Yeah, the only problem is I don't think Christian Watson's hamstrings want him to run fast, and so we'll
see. The next one I'll let you talk about because I'm still confused as to what, and I understand, but why? What?
This was my favorite trade of the whole season.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you some backstory. So the trade was I sent Steve Justin Tucker for a 2025 second. Now, what happened was I already had Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker on my team. So I had two good kickers. And then somebody dropped Brandon Aubrey to waivers. And I was like, oh, I want to pick up Aubrey, but I'm not carrying three kickers.
Right.
So I was being a smartass and sent Steve a trade offer to give me his 2025 second for Justin Tucker, thinking he would immediately reject it and be like, you're a dumbass. By the way, when I tried to look up Justin Tucker's dynasty value, they don't give values for kickers. So that wasn't even an option. So Steve accepted the trade, and I'm like, what the hell? And then the next morning, Steve dropped Justin Tucker. I'm like, Steve, what did you do? He's like, yeah, I might have been a little drunk when I saw the trade, and I thought I had Justin Tucker on my team, and you were offering me a second for him. So I accepted the trade because I thought I was getting the second. And I was like, there's a part of me that feels bad and wants to reverse the trade. But no, that's your bad, bro.
I don't feel bad at all. If you don't know your team, your own team, that's funny. Yeah, I saw he put in the comments about a drunk trade, but I was just like, I just thought he was like, oh yeah, and hit it. But he thought he had Justin Tucker.
Yep. So possibly my favorite trade of the year.
Great, I love it.
All right, next one.
More of those. So the next one involves myself and Steve again. I had to do this trade because I needed a quarterback. There literally was no quarterbacks available on the waiver wire. Everybody was out, hurt. It was a mess. And I don't remember. I think it was Jason S.
Smith,
who I was also talking to at the time. But I traded Will Levis. I'm sorry, I received Will Levis in a second round, 2.10 for Derrick Henry. Yes, people are probably like, oh, Derrick Henry, but I've had Derrick Henry for a while, and yes, he performs at the end. I was also at the point in the season where I had lost like 12 in a row. Like I was in that middle area, and I was kind of going towards, I'm just going to get rid of the guys when I can. It turned out.
I actually think
Derrick Henry didn't do anything at the end of the season, and Will Levis didn't do anything for me, but I have an extra second round pick, and I came out on top of the trade. So
the trade actually made a lot of sense because you needed a quarterback, and 100%. Steve was coming on real strong at the end of the season, and everybody thought Derrick Henry was going to, he was playing Houston twice in the playoffs, who he's traditionally absolutely torched. So it was Steve making a trade for his playoff run. You needed the young quarterback, and it made a lot of sense. The values came out pretty close to even. I think it made a whole lot of sense.
Hopefully Will Levis, I mean, it's one of those things. We've got a super flex coming up.
He looks like the starting quarterback.
What's that?
He looks like the starting quarterback for the Titans.
He's going to be the starting quarterback. Like he's He's big. He's got an arm. Like it was worth a shot.
Yeah, but I can't support somebody who eats bananas with the peel on and puts mayo in his coffee.
Mayonnaise in their coffee. Like what? Yeah, he might get dropped solely because of his eating habits, but if he performs, I'm going to keep him.
Yeah. All right. Hey, next trade was the big one between you and I, with me trying to make some moves for the playoffs again. Also, I received David Montgomery and Devonta Smith. You and I had been like going back and forth on a bunch of things. I got David Montgomery and Devonta Smith. At the time the trade was made, when you sent the offer, I couldn't hit accept fast enough. Except I ended up sending you Kyron Williams, Rashee Rice, and a 2025 second. However, looking at the value of the trade as of today, not when the trade happened, you should have been giving me the second, and it might have made the trade more even.
Yeah, probably.
So I admit, when I was making that trade, Kyron Williams was I can't remember.
He was on the IR at that time.
He was still hurt, and I wasn't sure how he was going to come back. And honestly, I'm still not completely convinced of Kyron Williams' future. I know a lot of people are talking about him as a first or second round pick next year in redraft and an early round pick in Dynasty. I know he had a really good year, but he's also gotten hurt.
Here's the problem with Kyron Williams. He got all of his points because he had a heavy workload. With the heavy workload comes injury, and he's a smaller back. So if they can get somebody, which they have, if he can split some time, and he can still he can do what he does on a little less workload. But if he gets the same workload, it's going to be the same thing. He's going to get his points at the beginning of the season, and at the end of the season, he's going to be hurt for a couple games, and he'll come back at the end. But
yeah, and also Rashee Rice wasn't performing to the level he is now. When the trade was made, he's come up. So, I mean, I got David Montgomery.
I wanted youth, and you gave me youth. So thanks.
I gave you youth. David Montgomery. He's still on a big contract. I know Jahmyr Gibbs is there, but I don't think he's going anywhere.
It's the same backfield next year. David Montgomery is going to get the third down in the goal line, and he's probably going to put up, less than 50 yards a game, but he's going to have a touchdown or two, and he's going to get you the points that he needs.
Yeah, and then Devonta Smith, he's still super young. He's a very talented guy. He's going to be around a long time. So, did the trade probably work out a little better for you? Am I real upset about it? No, I'm still all right with it.
No, Devonta Smith is going to be fine. I'm a little perplexed. Obviously, when AJ Brown is in the lineup, he's their number one. But last night, I don't know how much of the game you got to watch, but he was their third option. He didn't really start doing anything until who else went out? Julio Jones went out, and all of a sudden they started throwing the ball to Devonta Smith. Like, why is he not an option? I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he stays in Philadelphia after his rookie deal's up. I still think he's a real good player.
He's fantastic. He's a fantastic receiver, but I feel like I needed something different. So,
yep. All right, next trade. This was me concerned late in the season about my quarterback situation. And so I sent Raph DeAndre Hopkins and a 2025 second for Justin Fields. I wanted Justin Fields because he had a good playoff schedule coming. I ended up never starting him because Dak showed up so much at the end of the season in terms of fantasy production. I know not in the playoffs, but the fantasy playoffs, he sure performed. The value depends on how you look at it in Superflex or non-Superflex to see who won the trade. I think it worked out. It was kind of fun to take Justin Fields away from Raph since he's a Bears fan, but also Justin Fields comes with a lot of question marks because who the hell knows where he's going to be next year?
That's the biggest thing. It's like, is Chicago out on him? They see he made huge improvements this year, but he's got some holes in his game. But there's some teams out there that needs some a quarterback and that type of quarterback. So, well, I don't know. It's
it's
kind of that question mark. Like, do you get him? Do you not? He has value, but does he really have value? I don't know.
Send him to the Falcons. How does he look there? It'd be interesting with some young weapons, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. Last trade of the season was my least favorite, which I want you to know, if anybody ever questioned whether I help my wife with trades or not, the answer is no, because if I was asked, this trade never would have happened. Why don't you go ahead, Drew?
All right, so I tried to get rid of AJ Dillon the entire season. Anyways, this was a starting point. And I felt like I needed to give up more than obviously the 1-for-1, the AJ Dillon for Jameson Williams. But I didn't. I thought it was a starting point, and I thought we were going to have to negotiate a little bit, and it didn't have to. So I got Jameson Williams, and Janelle is stuck with AJ Dillon.
Yeah, well, she really wanted to make sure she made a trade this year. Her goal next year is at least 2 or 3. She saw the offer. She sat on it. She did some research and decided to accept it. It is what it is.
I don't know AJ Dillon's contract. He is a really good running back.
He's a free agent.
So does he need? I think he might need a new team that can utilize him a little bit better. That maybe has a little bit better offensive line. I don't know. I don't understand how Jones can be so good and Dillon, they're like it can't get past 4 yards a carry. I don't understand it, but
is what it is. Trade's done, and we're done. That was the last trade of the season. I don't know if anybody else enjoyed it, but I had a whole lot of fun reviewing these and seeing them, and I hope that we double the number of trades next season, and then we'll have to split this up into 2 episodes, because as it is, we're at almost an hour, and we didn't mean to be, but oh well.
But it's fun talking about it and analyzing, and it really puts into perspective, like, make trades. Like, get out there and do some stuff. Don't just sit on your team. Like,
like I said, overall, I computed the value of all the trades I made for my team, and I ended up 26 points up or something like that. But when you look at the number of trades I made, that's an average of increasing my team by 2 points a trade. And like I said, if I hadn't traded anything with Neil, that number would have been a lot higher. That's how it panned out. So, all right, well, that was fun. Until next week, y'all.
See you next week.
Later.
Cheers.